believe what I was listening to. But like we've been talking about the Vance Lipton
Right.
and blues. Had a whole period where I just went and collected all the blues records that I could. Was nuts about Charlie Patton and Blind Lemon Jefferson
Right.
and Robert Johnson, but more like what's that guy who was incredible, Blind Blake. Played those rags.
Yeah.
Oh man, love
finger picking, right? Yeah.
Arthur Crudup. And I still, Sleepy John Estes and Yank Rachel played the mandolin. That stuff was so good, and I think a lot of it was the alternative record stuff.
Sure. This is when you were in college.
This is before I was in high school.
Okay. How old are you? Can I ask?
I'm 44 now.
So, okay, you're just shy of my
Just a
age.
kid.
Okay. So you were born 56?
I'm 55. Yeah.
Okay. All right. You just, yeah.
So so just like in high school we just started listening to that stuff. Had a little band and we tried to play different kinds of music, but didn't have enough experience. Really I think we tried to do more than we could imagine. So a lot of it after that I just kind of tried to listen to as much different kind of music as I could, and was delivering office furniture in Dallas when I heard turned the radio on one day. And I think it was KERA. Well, I didn't even know it existed. I just turned the radio on,
Right.
and I heard this unearthly sound, and it was, as I found out later, Liam O'Flynn, who was a uilleann piper.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that.
And he played with a band that was really popular in the '70s called Planksteed.
Okay, I've heard the name. Yeah.
It was just beautiful.
I never knew much about that Celtic scene. Still don't.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I yanked the truck over
It's
to
a
the
big
side of the
world.
road. What do you?
Yeah, I know that.
I yanked
Yeah.
the truck over the side of the road and just shut it down and listened. I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Uh-huh.
Man, I got to listen to this, find out what it is. And the guy announced a little bit, didn't tell me much, but I realized it was a double reed instrument of some kind. It sounded like it was a bellows, like a bagpipe type of instrument.
Right.
So I thought, well, how can I find out about that stuff? I was living in Denton, and there was a music school there. So what I'll do is I'll go up to the library, I'll go get a picture of an old bagpipe, and I'll Xerox it, and I'll put a note on it, go tack it up on the music school. If you know anything about this, just let me know what it is. And so I did. And this guy named Tim Walsh gave me a call, and he was a music composition student. He just graduated, and his granny gave him a trip to Ireland for his graduation present, and went over there. He stumbled into the Pipers Club in Dublin and got hit full in the face with the real thing. So he was really jazzed about it. He came home and he saw my little note, gave me a call. We got together, so we became roommates. And he went. He was doing laser shows and stuff. In fact, he still does that. He used to play with a band called Brave Combo.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know Brave Combo.
Yeah, I was there when they.
Polka Sonic and
Right.
yeah.
We lived in this little house on Oakland Street in Denton when Carl came over one day, and Jim was just nut. He was crazy about poker.
Yeah.
And so Carl was an incredibly intense guy. But we were Tim in a room together for a long time, and then he brought back with him some recordings and addresses to get recordings, and I got interested. Even then, I guess because of what I'd grown up, I just got fascinated. Once I knew it was a traditional form, and I understood listening to it was definitely a traditional form, but I wanted to find out the good stuff.
You're at 71, 72 now, right? You're still in high school?
It's been 74.
You're in college.
75,
yeah, okay.
74, I think. And 74, 5.
Okay.
So Gail Lynn Records was out of Dublin, and I was interested in piping and fluting, so I got some Willie Clancy records and Seamus Tansey and all these guys who were like sort of the same thing as Vance Lipscomb and Bill Monroe, only over there.
Over there. Yeah.
Because I'd always found that just going straight to the source was always really good. Like I loved those Ry Cooder songs, but then when I went and listened to Joseph Spence play, I said, man, that's where he gets that stuff.
Yeah.
So I just got deeply interested in that form of music, and so really it's kind of driven. You find something that has captured your imagination, and you realize you don't going to be able to understand this stuff by yourself, and you sure as hell can't make it up. Being in the little rock and roll band that's shown us,
Right.
we got to write all our own songs. we don't know enough to write our own songs. We don't know how to do this. We make up things, but realize they sounded like people who sounded like people who sounded like people we didn't know.
Yeah.
And so you just have to, you gotta tap into something. It seemed like that existed before you, and there's something, I don't know what it is. There's just an aesthetic sense that I never liked romantic music very much. You know, I'm not Debussy. I'm not even a big Beethoven fan.
Yeah.
Once you start to come out of it, you know, and get to some of the post-romantic types, Eric Satie, or things like that. There's enough sense of humor and not so much seriousness that it's interesting. I like some of the really intense modern sounds of the early 20th century. But what I liked best was the common practice era music, Vivaldi, Bach, but then go back a little bit further and start hitting some of that early music, the medieval music. And I began to get this dissociated sense that it's best kind of exemplified by its opposite. And that is a songwriter singing a song about writing songs and singing songs and being on stage. Is one of the least attractive things I can imagine. And gushy things that compel emotion forward. So I'm not much of a big Wagner fan. I just don't. I mean, I see why they burned the places down when it first came out. I understand. Because there's something that music communicates. For me, instrumental music is even the best in a pure form. I don't know how to describe it. That this ideas that can't be expressed in words. They can be analyzed structurally by words, but you listen to a melody and it conveys something, not, you know, that sounds like wind through the bushes. No, it doesn't sound like anything else. That's this, there's a melody has its own distinctive character that can only be described in terms of itself. So that you hear a tune like, and some of them have a very strong character, like this tune called The Wise Maid. It's a tune from Northern Ireland. And Rakish Paddy is another one that they just, something about those, the rhythm and the melodic structure conveys something really strong. And I guess it's the sense of not owning the music that has a lot to do with why traditional performers maintain that kind of pure aesthetic sense, so that even songs with words have a disembodied character. I wrote out one morning, you know, and there's this, everything is kind of hypothetical. It's not really me singing. It's me singing something about, maybe something even beyond your personal ability to comprehend or understand. So the words aren't personal things at all. And I don't know why that's attractive, but for some reason it is. And find it all over the place. And then there are those things that are created in that environment that just seem to kind of astound me. And sometimes somebody can take them, you know, and of course new tunes are written all the time, and incredibly expressive things, but there's often a boundary that's crossed. A tune will be written and you can say, God, that's a remarkable piece of music. That was written by somebody. That was written by Ed Reevy or some guy like that. But then you'll be able to hear a song, sometimes you think, that asshole wrote that song. I can tell. And then, so there are even people who play tricks with it. Bob Bovee, who's a real good trickster from up in Minnesota, had had this tune he learned called Squirrel Heads and Gravy. And it'd been around. I'd heard the tune several times before. It was just, you know, like an old-time tune that's had kind of a nice sound to it. He told me the story on it, but he knew the guy that made up that tune. And what he did is he went out to dances and stuff and would ask, does anybody know this tune called Squirrel Heads and Gravy? I said, no, I never heard that before. You're getting what a funny. He says, a great tune, boy, I sure wish I heard it one time. He'd do this for a while and plant the seed,
Yeah.
and then he started to play the tune. People ask him, "What's that?" "Oh, that's at Squirrel Heads and Gravy." And he instigated his way into the tradition like that.
That's kind of funny. I thought people were going to start telling him yes. Everybody play a little bit.
Yeah, it goes like this.
And then you could piece them together and make up the tune.
But I don't know. It's just and so I think, and there's a shared sense, at least I know there is, among people who hear that stuff, because I'll run into them all the time, and once I start talking to someone, we both know what we're talking about. You can comprehend it, and then some people will be absolutely consumed with it to the exclusion of all other kinds of music, and
Right.
and become what they call the folk Nazis,
Yeah.
and who are people I really admire a lot. I really admire those guys, and I
That's
admire.
interesting.
Oh man, and I tell you who I really admire is for years on the Folkways show. You get all kinds of calls from people, from everything in the world, from the most wonderful compliments to people who wonder why you aren't playing this or playing that. And what I love is good bluegrass folks who come in and say, "Listen, could you play some bluegrass?" Or that, "No, please." And people who are just dying to hear this rock solid, hardcore, traditional music, and these are not guys who ever thought about it for shit. That is just, it's in them, man, and that's what they got to hear.
Some are old Scruggs from 1960 or something like that.
They just got to hear that Sarah Gunning.
Yeah.
That aesthetic is there, and it's been completely obliterated by the commercial world. And it's one thing that, and
You get calls on the air for people who reach out to you. Really?
Oh, yeah, and I encourage them, because that's the most fun thing, is to talk to different people. I like that better than anything else, because you never know who's going to call.
Yeah.
It can be some asshole, or it can be the nicest person in the world, or it can be somebody who's going to turn you on to resources you can't imagine.
You do most of this interchange off mic, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't hear. Yeah.
Yeah, I look like a one-legged paper hanger in a room full of rocking chairs, whatever, because everything's moving really fast. It's really kind of exciting. I'm getting too old for it, but that's the main thing, is just to connect up with people, because I remember just feeling lost. This is great music. I wish I knew what the hell this was, or how I could find out more about it. I became my sweetheart for a while. She was a really nice lady. Had a couple of kids, and had been through a bad divorce, kind of a low self-esteem, and she really liked. I met her because we were playing music somewhere, and she was kind of bowled over, and she heard this for the first time, and I got to know her, and she had been really interested in music, but interested in folk music, but had got kind of derailed. About as close as she should get, she found some some Arlo Guthrie records, because she'd heard of Woody Guthrie. I mean, I like Jack Guthrie better than all of them. But she pulled her in the direction of sort of the way the music industry wants to define what folk music was.
Right.
So she knew she liked this stuff, and she got as close as she could to it, but had not found Rounder Records, hadn't found the independent people yet, because she was from East Texas, and I mean, that stuff was in California.
Yeah.
And there was not an internet to help you find it back in those days. If you didn't happen to have Rounder's address in Massachusetts and write them a letter, then they didn't know who you were, and you didn't know who they were.
Right.
And no matter how much you wanted that sound, it was unreachable for you. So it was kind of a longing. Well, we got together, and I tried to instruct her as much as possible, and then I found out that actually a story I probably ought not to tell, but I guess it's you turn that thing off and
Yeah, sure. Anytime you want.
because
Okay.
where we were, but I just think it's just try not to speak ill of anybody if I can help that.
Right.
I remember where we were at. That young lady, we became close, and we moved. I convinced her we should probably move to Austin.
Yeah.
And so we did, and I had come here. That was the second time I'd lived here before. Some years I moved back up to town, and like the first time I was in town, I just had this great job up in Denton when I was going to school. A friend of mine told me about there was a place called Brome Motorhomes, And what they did is they buy Chevy truck chassis, big old
Mhm.
giant, 1-ton chassis, and build the campers
Put a
on the
shell
back
on
of
it,
them.
yeah.
Build the campers, and then they had to get those out to the dealerships all over
Mhm.
the country, North Carolina, Virginia, all over the place. And of course, they're too big to put on a truck. The only way to get them is to drive them.
So you.
Because in high school,
Yeah, that was a
he was in
great
college,
job.
man, it was a great job. Go out there and sit around and study, wait for a truck to come up, and you'd get one. You'd take you to, go to Virginia, and
Yeah.
they'd pay you enough to go out there
Mhm.
and then fly back.
Yeah.
So I'd go out there and do what this friend who told me about the job was his gig. Go out there and hitchhike back.
Yeah.
So you pocket the change
Uh-huh.
and hitchhiked hundreds of thousands of miles, I think, over the period. It was a blast to be able to do that.
Right.
But when I needed to move to Austin, we took one of those Brougham homes, loaded up all our stuff, and moved down here and set the odometer back together and delivered it. But got down here and stopped at a little place called the Sunday Palace, which is over there in Hyde Park. It's gone now. I think it's Julio's or something else over there.
Mhm.
But rolled down the windows and playing a tune while I was doing my laundry next door, and playing a little Irish tune on the tin whistle. And this guy came up. His name was John Polachek.
Huh?
He said, "Hey, I know that tune. All right, that's why I do this stuff." And if
Yeah.
you try to put it out there, you run into folks all the time. And sure enough, we hit it off real good. When I met his brother Dave, who they started the Austin Friends of Traditional Music here in town. A wonderful woman named Maggie Polachek, Dave's wife. She's since died. And they were really deep into this. They're a Russian Jewish family
Mhm.
who had ties to I think their parents were in the Almanac Singers or something like that. They're
Really?
from California. Yeah, and so they had been like weaned on this stuff. And they were, Dave especially was very deep into Irish pipers.
Uh-huh.
And a subject I was very interested in too, so we hit it off right away. And that was sort of like my introduction to the music scene there. They were having the AFTM was having its open mics at the Armadillo on Sundays.
This is about 75, 76 now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're at the Armadillo Beer Garden on Sundays, and it was great.
Mhm.
Leo Sullivan's doing the sound, and we'd get on there, and there were like people would stand up and do an a cappella song, and some lady would get up and sing a Joan Baez song, and then Dennis McDaniels would come in with his great bluegrass band, and so it was like just a great way to spend a Sunday afternoon.
None of this was booked. It was all a jam, right? Just
No, you
people-
just sign up and show up and
I
get on the
see.
list.
Okay.
So they'd set up the microphone,
Uh-huh.
and you do the sign-up list.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, people would just talk and drink beer and
Right.
chat and play tunes, and then you come up and play a couple of songs, and it was always just great. It was really
Yeah.
wonderful. So this friend of mine, I guess, we came back down here, and she began to get interested. I met a guy named Ralph White playing a fiddle, Irish fiddle, on the street downtown, and he was playing in front on the drag,
Mhm.
and I recognized his Irish music right away, so we hit it off, and started. He needed a place to live, and I did too, so we went over and got a place to live in Clarksville. I
Uh-huh.
figured out that now the rent I was paying in Clarksville, I could pay my rent in 1 hour with what I make now. Blew me away.
Yeah.
That's what's wrong with this town.
A lot of towns.
Oh
Yeah.
man, it was a nice little place. So we hardly had to work hardly at all in those days. I was doing construction work and
Mhm.
then taking day jobs for a while and quit and work. But Ralph's a very talented, idiosyncratic kind of musician. He was with the Bad Livers when he
Yeah.
started out. Yeah,
Okay.
He's quit that since and playing with the Gulf Coast Playboys now.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Hmm. But he was deep into Irish music at the time. He introduced me to the fiddle players, and I began to then be really interested in trying to collect up as much
Right.
good music, fiddle playing music. I liked the Clara style, and he'd been over there a couple of times and had just a real engaging way of playing, just a natural player. Something
Right.
about he picks up, and it may not be in tune exactly, but it's got a quality that you just can't beat. Ralph's a great player, and so what happened is you just have parties and people get together and play music all the time, and that's pretty much what you do. You have a job to pay the rent,
Right.
and
Sure.
then you get gigs sometimes playing music here and there, but the point is just to be able to do that as point. I mean, that's why you work.
Yeah.
So you can learn these really good tunes and show up, meet with other people, and it's the focus, you know. So it's not trying to make a living at it. You know, there's absolutely no way. There's no point in that. There's no sense in that.
Yeah.
It's just part of what you do in your life. It's a great book by Canning Feldman. Where is that? There's just an interview with some fiddlers from Northern Ireland, and they talk about it a lot. That for them, and that's another whole other path of thought about music. These guys played music intensely, but for them, it was kind of a meaningless exercise outside of the context of the dancing and the community and the people they lived in and the people that they knew.
Yeah.
So that even now, go down to Art's Rib House on Tuesday night to the Texas Old Time Fiddlers Jam, or the one they used to have over at the Hancock. And playing is important, but it's not the most important thing.
Yeah.
Some music over there is pretty horrible.
Yeah.
Some of it's great, but the people that you meet and just the fact that it's going on,
Yeah.
and you come in and if you bring in a new tune, it's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's a whole, it's its own reason for being. So you sort of latch onto that, and it becomes just a pretty important part of your life. Well, this lady that I had moved here to town with, we kind of drifted apart over time. Unfortunately, we still remain to this day very good friends, and I'm very fond of her. But it's been wonderful how she's come into her own as a banjo player, and now plays with an old-time band here in town. They have gigs going around, but she has a good store of tunes. Goes off to Cliff Top and all the Eastern contests and festivals that they have over there. And it's deep off into it. Is rock solid in the tradition. Is happy and really self-confident. And it's just I can remember back and thinking that poor lost woman, trying to latch on to something that she couldn't find, and I'd been lucky enough just to stumble into it.
Sure.
And the fact that we sort of then stumbled further in it together, and now she's off into different styles and stuff where she's much more knowledgeable than I am about those things that really drove her, and because there's a lot to learn there. We had shit to learn from Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Yeah.
But you could learn a hell of a lot from French Carpentier or Johnny Doherty, these guys that have like this character, his family traces their lineage as musicians back to the disappeared Gaelic culture in the north of Ireland, which has completely been utterly decimated. But back into the early 18th century and beyond, his people were professional musicians, which at the time was a station in the old order. And so the music that he has ties back that are analytically significant. Then you listen to music. And that's what does it, because all of a sudden, if you knew about this and you listen to it, so what? It just sounds like music. But listen to it and you hear something going on. There's some extremely deep thing happening there. I don't know what it is, but when I wandered in and saw Mans Lipscomb, that had it too. There was something fucking going on there. There was something happening. There was something significant about it. I don't know if the words don't go to describe it any better than they can go to make you comprehend a melody that's only comprehensible in terms of itself.
Right.
And there are things that are just so complete that any description of them is totally inadequate to describe it. And so you look for clues and signposts and things that might help you latch on to some understanding about it. And, just play something there. And it can come out of the funniest things, too. that may or seem completely unrelated. Where's that deal here? No, I may not be able to lay my hands on it. You know, it's a I have a periodic system here. Every 2 or 3 weeks I do the show and everything goes to hell. And then I spend about 2 or 3 weeks trying to put it back together. Let it get off to here. Yeah, there it is. Andrew and Jim Baxter were a couple of musicians. I believe Tennessee, Kentucky. That fiddle player and his uncle, who was a guitar player, and recording only a couple of records in the 20s, and they happened to be black, and this is some of the things that got me going about the black hillbilly music. The stuff that one of the things they've kind of been fascinated with here recently.
I heard you. I was driving with my son to Bastrop State Park Saturday. I was able to catch the first part of your show on DeFord Bailey.
Oh,
that was an interesting
good
stuff, yeah.
That was a lot. I really enjoyed doing that. There we go. Yeah, because that's a whole disappeared thing that we have in common, black people and white people, much further than realized. Much further than they realized. This is interesting stuff. That artist.
Oh, I know
player.
William Sidney Mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're aware of those things. But every now and then you'll hear something and it'll just, something rings or something going on. This one just got me. You may have heard this before anyway. I don't know. The Georgia Stomp.
I think I know the tune. But I'm not sure. It might be the Eunice Stomp or the Birmingham Stomp.
This is Big Legs 5. What it is, just bowing his knee and a change.
I break loose and walk back.
The way they talk reminds me when I was a kid, listening to the old guys talk. Listening to the old people talk. Can't do it anymore. It's that dimension thing.
Yeah.
Mel Gibson's making a movie about the Three Stooges. And they had to get some cuts in, I think it's about their actual lives.
Right.
And I saw just little quick cuts of them trying to, replay parts of their actual work.
Right.
And had actors standing in, and you realize how different the world is really.
Yeah.
And how there are some completely intractable and uncrossable boundaries.
Yeah.
You cannot do it.
Can't do that comedy.
You can't make a Stradivarius because the environmental conditions that grew the trees, all the stuff that came together is gone. There's a great story about this guy, Irish Catholic who wanted to marry this, Irish Protestant who wanted to marry this Catholic girl. And so it's well worth thinking about where the story was that he went to the priest and said, "We want to get married." He said, "Well, you can't get married. You're Protestant. She's Catholic." "Well, it doesn't matter, does it? We love one another." He said, "Yes, it matters." "No, it doesn't. You have to become a Catholic." So he said, "Well, I'll become Catholic." He said, "Well, you probably can't, but you can try anyway." So he had to eat fish on Fridays.
Yeah.
And he'd always eat meat on Friday. And this story I can't tell very well because the art of casting it properly is also way beyond me. But the story was that his friend came by one afternoon on a Friday and smelled the delicious smell of roast being fried. And he looked in the window and there was his friend saying, "I am a Catholic, not a Protestant. I am a Catholic, not a Protestant. You're a fish, not a steak. You're a fish." And it's that the story is fraught with a lot of meaning, because as much as you try, the experiences that we have, shape even the little things about us.
Well, that's an interesting, then what's what exactly then is going on as people are getting together, trying to play older styles,
Mhm.
which, I tend to agree with you. You can't recreate.
Impossible. You're not the same people, just like you and I aren't the same people we were a year ago.
And a lot of folks aren't just trying to create music. A lot of folks into old time music are trying to evoke a world, I think, in their lives.
Yeah, I think
a world that's gone.
Yeah, that's kind of I think there come kind of some hokey things like that, but
I don't just mean with material trappings. I mean psychologically. By doing it, by throwing themselves into old time music, I feel a lot of folks want to bring themselves back in time, so to speak. Bring themselves out of their geography, their present day geography.
Yeah, probably some folks like that. But I think that experiment with time is one that's undertaken by people of varying degrees of skill and subtlety. So that the people who dress up in bonnets and try to make believe like these guys who do the Renaissance fair stuff and all that kind of, it's kind of just juvenile.
Right.
There are also things that are immensely attractive about the aesthetic. There are things that are deeply attractive to me about the 18th century. And read Swift, read these characters, Samuel Johnson, Boswell. I mean, this stuff is immensely attractive to me. I could never hope to submerge myself. I could perhaps if I wanted to become an academic, and this is another route. This is a very serious person. Now he realizes that he's not going to be able to do anything but become an expert.
Yes.
He may get really weird. What's that? What's the Solomon Grundy poem? Who wrote that one? About the knights of old. Guy. Solomon Grundy. Kept on drinking. It's a good poem, but it's about this very subject that you can't recreate, but you may be able to gain a deeper understanding, and you may be able to play a really weird little time game. And that is, you then work off creating your own aesthetic based on those things that come to you. And that's what we all do anyway. And you can either use Oprah Winfrey as your model, or you can cast around and try to find a set of shared values. And sometimes, if they're somewhat secret, if they're somewhat elusive, they're more romantic, and people get lost in the romantic side. They're also very powerful in a lot of ways. And they lead, I think, to deeper understanding about the present if you can spend a significant amount of energy trying to acquire not information, but information, emotion, experience of things that are beyond your experience and are available to you from others. that have been provided to them by others in the same fashion, in a chain that goes back beyond human memory. That's what it is, I think. That the old man has something to tell you.
Yeah.
As a teenager, you can tell him to go fuck off, or you can listen to him. And he may be wrong. He may be dead wrong. It's like, but you can learn stuff. So I was up in Blanco County Courthouse a long time ago, traveling around with these guys, and there was a thing. They had a kind of a Founders Day or something, and I was just wandering around that old courthouse, which they've since restored. It is a beautiful building. And there was this old guy, and we were talking about stuff, and he said, there had been some shooting recently in the paper, some child in drive-by shooting had been killed by another one. And he said, and I don't know if I can cast this properly. It takes it's rather like an argument that requires some construction. We'll work through Augustine's ontological proof of the existence of God. It's a fascinating synthesis of two disparate arguments, and it's the only way I can ever remember how to recreate that argument is to start with his first example and the second example. One, the painter understanding a painting and the viewer understanding the painting in a different way, and then this weird logical conceit about the existence of God. But the way that the two arguments blend together is fascinating. And this sort of came at the same way, so it's rather difficult to describe without being able to reconstruct it. I had this conversation with a friend of mine from Pakistan the other day. We were talking about the differences in Christian-based cultures like our own, and Muslim, which his is, and the futility of trying to live outside it, and the utility of being able to not take it too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But the comments that were made by this guy, handed down, that in one sense were dead wrong, but in the other sense require that you think about them a little hard. Some kids killing each other, the damnedest thing. When I was a boy coming up, he lived there in Blanco all his life, he lived in his 90s. He said, man, we used to have them fights every day. Country kids and the city kids. Go after it tooth and nail. City kids. You've been to Blanco.
Yeah.
You can imagine Blanco.
What the city kids were, right?
What the city kids were. And it's a big fight, lose ears, bloody nose, teeth, just ferocious fights. And those constituents going to make up a different life than our own. A lot of the reasons that they can't sound like the Three Stooges now is because the day-to-day experience of people without refrigeration and without the comforts have a lot to do with shaping how hard they are and things. But no kid ever killed another one with a gun or a knife. Ever. Why? And he had a good explanation. He said, God damn, nobody but a nigger or a chicken shit Mexican pull a gun or a knife. Now there's what you could look at as a vicious racist statement. It's also universal. My friend from Pakistan said, I know that statement exactly. I've heard that 100 times. Nobody but a Punjabi would do a thing like that.
Right.
And it was a very useful, instructive way to ensure that their children didn't kill one another, because there was a standard. What did the standard require? Denigration of another race.
Sure.
So there you get into an area of how do we think about maintaining structures that keep our kids from killing each other while not holding on to concepts that we have that are to us repugnant. And this is where the music thing comes in interesting again. If music can introduce to us non-logical, non-rational concepts that are unconceivable to us, there must be rational and logical concepts and positions that are unconceivable to us.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Such that, so here's what I guess is what my interest comes to be about. I believe everything I know is probably wrong. No matter how right I think it is. And keeps me up nights most of the time. Makes me a good computer programmer. But I assume that every position I make is probably going to be wrong. Just like, God damn, sure wish that woman knew how to sing.
Yeah.
Like Sarah Gunning, she's she in one context at least was wrong,
Right.
but was she really?
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
and at the same time, and that's kind of a modern approach to ethics in general, I guess, that is also somewhat based on the idea that there are no absolutes.
Yeah.
And being rebellious in nature, I wonder if that's not wrong. If there are things that really matter. When I was a kid, we lived out on the edge of town, countryside for miles around, and we'd spend most of our time out running around in the woods. And there were places that I could mention to people, you know, the kids that would go out there, and they would know right where I was talking about, even though there were no really good geographical distinctions. There were these places in the woods,
Mm-hmm.
and they would have something about them.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't really matter. I think, you know, you could talk about where the low place where there were those great big old grapevines, and you know off to the left, yeah, I know where that place is. It's low, really good. Let's go down there. Talk about these places. We can understand them in a geographical sense, like the corner of 4th and Main, or where the trees with the big grapevines are, but that's not what it is. There was something else going on there, and I had to wonder. I wondered then, and I wonder now. Is there something absolute? If they paved that place over, built a Kmart on top of it, would there still be people putting their shopping carts down and say, something odd about this aisle? And so you get into this sense of real absolutes, and can you recognize them? Could you recognize them? You know? So is the old Pakistani guy who hates Punjabs right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. But so if you're so unsure of things, you have to have some way of a structure for pulling meaning out of things around you. Music is a tool that, like, in a lot of ways to gain some kind of understanding. And how, I don't know. Stumbled across this really cool book a while back. A guy with an unlikely named Jamie James, I think it was, called Music of the Spheres. But it was about our understanding of what music is, and how for such a short time, amazingly short, blindingly short time, we formed ideas about music that are maybe contrary to what all of the history of Western culture has thought about music. 1,000 years of instruction on music in the universities dealt with music and its relationship to a deeper understanding of the universe as appreciated, and this is kind of a mystical thing by what's that guy, Pythagoras, the semi-legendary, semi-mythical philosopher
Right.
guy from a long time ago. Well, he was, you know, like those Greeks who were cool guys, realized that you cut a string, and he put a string in half, and you get an octave on either side. Well, what happens? You do that again. Experiment with this stuff, and pretty soon the mathematics becomes very fascinating. And at the time when so long ago, thoughts about how you go about understanding the world were even very different from us, because of, well, you went to college, you remember Plato and Plato's cave and all that stuff. So it wasn't important. You know, that was such a revelation to me when I was in school. People have been dropping rocks and stuff off of buildings forever. Didn't those assholes see that they hit the ground at the same time? Well, of course they did. But it's because you're in an imperfect world, and everything is not the real world. It's complete bullshit. So here you had the necessity, the only way to really understand the world is for a rational person to come up with an explanation for it. And so some of the explanations they come up with were, to us, utterly ridiculous. But to them, hoping you could prove anything in this imperfect world by dropping two objects off a building was even more ridiculous. So music was a tool for gaining some deeper understanding of how the universe really worked, because, Lord Almighty, isn't it true? All the mathematical correlations they make, and then the music of the spheres, and so they then correlate the planets to the right time. And there's some pretty neat coincidences in there, but everything is built up on that, and so music is an embodied form of mathematics in a very ethereal world. So it's really it's an incredible tool that is hideously abused for purposes of entertainment.
Sure.
So music for entertainment is to music as pornography is to love. So that it is detestable. I mean, there are these savages who dance to music. So the musical aesthetic of Greece or Rome, at least in the elevated cultures to understand it, probably created stuff that is utterly unlistenable to us because it was trying to conform to a mathematical reality, which it doesn't conform to closely enough for us to get anything that is pleasing to us. So there's that cool trilogy or triarchy or whatever you call that thing of the music that we perceive as being enjoyable and pleasant, that we analyze rationally, and then somewhere between those what it really is, what is it for, and different ideas about what its purpose is, so that for 1,000 years, I mean from the Lord, before the birth of Christ, the focus of music was as a serious investigatory mechanism to get into real deep meaning about the purpose and structure of the universe. That's some pretty heavy shit.
Yeah.
That's really serious. So what does that do? It gives music, what is the word? Classical. It gives it a ponderous significance.
Mm-hmm.
So now I understand why they burnt the place down when Wagner wrote his operas.
Right.
Because what are they about? They are a complete subversion. They're like Technicolor pornography.
Yeah.
They're like utter subversion of the real purpose of music. And all this stuff is, of course, this is like anybody else. When you read things, and when you agree with them, you think they're really cool.
Yeah.
So you can see how this fits in with my philosophy about, or at least my prejudices about